Okay, TYU1. For each of the following, explain whether it is an example of tax evasion or avoidance. Selling a capital asset in May 2025 instead of March 2025 to ensure that the gain is taxed in a later tax year. Altering a bill of £700. So, first one, selling a capital asset in May 2025 instead of March 2025 so that it is taxed in the later tax year. Can I say this is an example of avoidance? Okay. Next, altering a bill of 700 to 7,000. Can I say this is forgery? This is nothing but an example of tax evasion. Moving funds into an ISA account so that interest can be earned tax free. Can I say again this is tax avoidance because this involves tax planning, right? Okay. So, specific tax avoidance schemes have been targeted by HMRC with anti avoidance legislation to counter the tax advantages gained by the taxpayer. Okay, so as I said, you should not take undue advantage of tax avoidance schemes. Okay, so if you try to avoid tax heavily, heavy tax planning. So in such situation, government have implemented kind of anti-avoidance legislation wherein you cannot take that undue advantage of that tax law, okay, or that undue benefit of it, right? HMRC have also introduced disclosure obligations regarding anti-avoidance tax schemes, requiring the declaration of the details of the scheme to HMRC and a general anti abuse rule to counter artificial and abusive schemes where arrangements are put in place deliberately to avoid a tax. Okay, so this is not kind of tax planning. This is kind of over, or I would say, taking undue benefits or undue advantage of the tax law, right? So, government does not, or HMRC does not support that, and hence has introduced general anti abuse rule, right? GAAR, to counter the artificial or to counter the abuse of the law. Okay. Further, there are some professional and ethical guidance, right? As ACCA is a professional body, so we need to adhere to professional code of ethics and conducts, right? These are, if you have given previous papers or earlier papers, then you must be aware of these principles. Okay, fundamental principles. ACCA expects its members, now not just members, its students, its affiliates, and everyone, okay, to adopt an ethical approach to work, employers, and clients, acknowledge their professional duty to society as a whole, maintain an objective look and outlook, and provide professional high standards of service, conduct, and performance at all times. Okay. So, to meet these expectations, the ACCA Code of Ethics and Conduct sets out five fundamental principles which members should abide by, yani adhere to, or else follow it. Okay, in simple terms. One is objective. Okay, objectivity. Second, professional competence and due care. Third, professional behavior. Fourth, integrity. And fifth, confidentiality, OPPIC. Let's see each of them one by one. Objectivity. Members should not allow bias, conflicts of interest, or the influence of others to override objectivity. So while I'm performing my work, I should not allow any of these things to influence my work or to change the opinion or any other thing. Okay. Next, professional competence and due care. Members have an ongoing duty to maintain professional knowledge and skills to ensure that a client or employer receives competent professional services based on current developments. Let's say, for example, law. Right? We are currently learning FA 2024, but in practical world, FA 2025 has been applied from 1st April, 1st April 2025. Right? So, by the time you give the tax paper and you reach the practical world, can I say the law would have been updated, the finance act would have been updated, so you need to be aware of the current developments, right, while performing your duty or while providing services to your clients, right? You need to be professionally competent, okay, while updating your skills or knowledge or both. Further, members should be diligent and act in accordance with applicable technical and professional standards when providing professional services, okay. and a proper care needs to be maintained while performing your duties. Okay, you should not have any careless attitude as such. Okay, we are professionals at that. Third, professional behavior. Members should refrain from any conduct that might bring discredit to profession. Right? Example, bribe or supporting in money laundering or supporting in tax avoidance. Right? Do not get into any such behavior. Okay, unprofessional behavior. Fourth, integrity. Members should act in a straightforward and honest manner in all professional and business relationships. Let's say, for example, mm, you have, let's say, for example, you quote £1,000 as your fees to your client. Okay. Now, after that, you say that additional £20 would be charged for this thing, additional £30 would be charged for this thing, additional £50 would be charged for this thing. So be clear now, what are your charges? If you want to charge 1100, charge 1100. Don't keep anything hidden. Be straightforward. Be honest, right? When you are dealing, right? Okay. Fifth, confidentiality. So, members should respect the confidentiality of information acquired as a result of professional and business relationships and should not disclose any such information to third parties unless they have proper and specific authority or there is a legal or professional right or duty to disclose. That is, for example, money laundering. Okay. Further, confidential information acquired as a result of professional and business relationships should not be used for the personal advantage of members or third parties. Okay. First thing, see, we are working for the client, so I cannot disclose my or I cannot leak my client's information to anyone else. Okay, I have that duty of confidentiality. Keep that information to the keep that sensitive information confidential, right? However, in case where I have proper authority or in case where it is my legal duty or professional right or duty to disclose such thing, then in that case I need to disclose it. Then in that case my legal right or duty or professional right or duty would override the confidentiality things. Okay, so best example is money laundering where law has been broken, right? uh, so here can I say this is a kind of cheating the entire UK. Money laundering, if you are money laundering, that laundered money, that black money would be infused in the economy, right? And you have not paid tax. That tax is paid to whom? The UK government. Entire UK government is for the public, of the public, by the public, right? So you are kind of cheating the entire government, entire UK, right? By money laundering. So in this case, can I say this disclosing this information to relevant authority would be in general public interest to do so. Right. So whenever there is general public interest to disclose things, then you have the duty to disclose that. Then in that case, that duty would always override your confidentiality clause. Okay. Further, it should not result in any kind of benefit either to you or any of the third parties or any other members with the use of that confidential information. Okay. So try to avoid that. Further, advising on tax issues. A person advising either a company or individual on taxation issues has duties and responsibilities towards both client and HMRC. Towards the client, that providing them best possible advice, right? Relevant advice, competent services, and towards HMRC, not cheating, right? Not getting into tax avoidance or not taking undue advantage of tax benefits provided by law. A member must never be knowingly involved in tax evasion. Okay, obviously, unknowingly you don't know, then no one can do anything about it. But knowingly, you should not be part of tax evasion. Third, okay, here I guess I said tax avoidance, right? Person advising either a company or individual. Yeah. So towards the client, you should advise into tax avoidance, right? In tax planning, right? And while duty towards HMRC, your duty is to pay the rightful tax, right, to HMRC while making the best advantage of the policies available, not evading or not taking undue advantage of the law. right? Okay. A member must never be knowingly involved in tax evasion. Third, the distinction between acceptable tax planning, not taking undue advantage, or not being aggressive tax avoidance, not doing aggressive tax avoidance, right? Even though both are legal, see, even this is legal, but uh, this is a kind of subject to significant recent debate and public debate, and this is kind of considered as somewhat unprofessional or somewhat unethical. Okay, aggressive tax avoidance. Okay, acceptable tax planning is fine. As a result, ACCA's ethical guidance states that members must not create, encourage, or promote tax planning arrangements or structures that set out to achieve results that are contrary to the clear intention of the parliament in enacting relevant legislation, and or are highly artificial or highly contrived and seek to exploit shortcomings within the relevant legislation, that is nothing but loopholes. Okay, so your policies, or I would say your arrangements, should not be planned in such a way that it is contradictory to the intention of the parliament. Parliament must have introduced the law with some intention, right? Or tax maker or lawmaker must have introduced that with some intention, and you are using it in such a way that it is the main intention of bringing that law is overridden, or is being contradicted, right? Or else you are taking undue advantage of the law, you are taking disadvantage of the loopholes, right, shortcomings of the law, uh, which is strictly prohibited or not encouraged at all. Okay, so never involve in either or both of these things. Okay, further, dealing with HMRC, it is important to ensure that information provided to HMRC is accurate and complete. Okay, a member must not assist a client to plan or commit any offense. Okay, we need to adhere to ethical standards and professional standards, right? If a member becomes aware that the client has committed a tax irregularity, okay, then in that case, they must first discuss it with the client and ensure that proper disclosure is made. Examples would include not declaring income that is taxable or claiming reliefs to which they are not entitled to, or else not notifying HMRC where they have made a mistake giving rise to an underpayment of tax or an increased repayment. Okay, so mistake has been done by HMRC, but you are aware that this is a mistake, so you should highlight this to HMRC. So you are not highlighting it, right? So these can be the examples, right? So where a taxpayer has made error, it will be necessary to decide whether it was a genuine error or a deliberate or a fraudulent act. Right? So once an error has been discovered, the member should explain to the client the requirement to notify HMRC. So if there is an error, client should this respond this to, or I would say disclose this to HMRC, right? As soon as possible, and the implications of their not doing so. So I need to make explain the client that this needs to be disclosed to HMRC, and if you do not do this, these would be the consequences, right? So let's say, for example, the client is refusing to make the full or prompt disclosure to HMRC. Okay, then in that case, the member must write and explain the potential consequences, because see, we are professionals. Okay, we are professionals, so we may face kind of issues when such things are discovered or get into public or get into the court of law. Okay, such issues, then in that case we need to have proper evidence that we have performed all our duty, we have explained the client of the consequences. If you do it orally, you do not have any proof, so keep it in writing, either on mail or on paper or whatever it is, right? Nowadays in digital era we are into email communication, so you can keep an email uh, correspondence as your evidence that you have explained the potential consequences of not doing this, right? Not disclosing this to HMRC. And further, you also need to consider whether the amount is material or not. If the amount is material, you need to decide whether you should continue to act for the client or act on the behalf of the client. Further, if the client refuses to make the full disclosure, the member should cease to act for the client. If the client is not not ready to disclose this, then stop acting for the client or cease to act for the client anymore. And you should write this to HMRC informing that you have ceased to act for the client, but without disclosing the reason why. Because see, here there is not some this is not some general or I would say any other offense under any other law, or you are not kind of, this is not some harm to the general public as such. Okay, so here you won't be disclosing it. But if there is money laundering situation, then there might be your additional responsibilities as such. Okay, so you need to evaluate that. Okay, but in general, you should not disclose the reason that why you have stopped to act for the client, but you should definitely tell that you are not acting for the client anymore from this day. So if any issue arises, you wouldn't be held responsible. Okay. Next, money laundering regulations. So money laundering is the term used for offenses including benefiting from or concealing the proceeds of a crime. Okay, so these are kind of money earned from illegal means, okay, illegal sources. Okay, so you cannot disclose the source to the government. So kind of money laundering systems are used to showcase that this earnings have been made from a legitimate source, though they are not. Okay, so all businesses within regulated sectors must appoint a money laundering reporting officer, that is MLRO, within the firm, right? This MLRO will decide whether a transaction should be reported to National Crime Agency, NCA. Okay, where a report is made, the client should not be informed, as this may amount to tipping off, which is an offense. Okay, so if you are reporting to MLRO, now MLRO has decided, okay, let's report this to NCA. So now, if this is being reported to NCA, you should not go and tell to the client that we are reporting this to NCA. No, keep this confidential, because this would amount to tipping off. So if you say कि you have already reported to NCA, then in that case, the problem will be that the client may try to hide, or may try to evade, or try to erase the evidences, right? So not to tip off your client. And reporting to NCA as such does not remove the requirement to disclose the information to HMRC, because you need to report to HMRC too and also NCA. Okay, because this is a matter of money laundering. Okay, this is not some normal matter. Okay. TYU2. When you are checking a recent tax computation from HMRC, you notice that they have made an error which has resulted in your client receiving a larger repayment than should have been made. So, what actions should you take? Okay. So can I say first you will discuss with the client that this error must be reported to HMRC, that you are not eligible to receive such a large repayment. Now, since the amount is large, it is definitely material. So if the client refuses to report, then in that case, first thing is you will discuss it with client, right? And tell them the consequences of the same. If the client is still refusing, then you should give in writing uh, whatever probable consequences are. Okay, if the client is still refusing, then in that case, since here it is a larger payment, then it's definitely a larger repayment, then it's definitely a material issue. And in that case, you should cease to act for the client, right? Cease to act for the client, and you should notify HMRC that you have ceased to act for the client, but not the reason. You should not disclose the reason due to confidentiality issues, right? And further evaluate if any money laundering issues are there. Here in this case, I don't. There is no situation of money laundering, right? Because here the mistake is from HMRC, right? Okay. Further, further, dishonest conduct of tax agents. There is a civil penalty of up to £50,000 for dishonest conduct of tax agents. In cases where the penalty exceeds the minimum penalty of £5,000, HMRC may publish details of the penalized tax agent. So, can I say here minimum penalty is 5,000 and maximum penalty is 50,000? Right? So in case penalty is more than 5,000, then in that case HMRC may publish details of the penalized tax agents. A kind of list will be published by HMRC. So can I say this is a kind of a blacklist, you can say, or kind of a list of dishonest agents. So this will create a bad name for you in the market. The reputation of the tax agents or tax advisors would be spoiled with this, right? So with agreement of tax tribunal, HMRC can access the working papers of an dishonest agents, right? Uh, this is further discussed in next chapter, chapter 12. So this ends your chapter 1. Let's do some TYU. Okay, which of the following is statutory legislation? Now, what is statutory legislation? Can I say law? Law is nothing but your acts. Okay, so case law, extra statutory concession, HMRC statement of practice versus Income Tax Act. Now, can I say all these are sources of law? Okay, right? HMRC is getting power to charge tax, but which one is act? Can I say Income Tax Act? This is the act, right? That is D. Okay. Next, TYU4. Jacinda, an ACCA member, discovers that a client has deliberately not declared a source of income on their tax return. Which of the following statements is correct? A. The member should immediately notify HMRC of the error. B. The member should notify the client of the error and explain the potential consequences before considering ceasing to act. C. The member must immediately make a report to the National Crime Agency due to the possibility of money laundering and notify the client that they have done so. D. The member should cease to act for the client if they refuse to disclose the error and advise HMRC that they have ceased to act for the client and reason why. So can I say A and C is wrong because they are saying that immediately you need to act or immediately do this or immediately do that, which is not required, right? First, you should discuss with the client, right? Notify the client and explain them the consequences before considering ceasing to act, right? And before notifying HMRC, you cannot notify about the error though. You can notify about that you have ceased to act for the client, but you cannot give the reason. So even this is wrong, right? So correct answer is B. Okay, next. TYU 5. Which of the following is an indirect tax? Corporation taxes, can I say direct tax? Direct tax, companies directly pay to HMRC. Capital gains tax, again, individuals directly pay to HMRC. Income tax, again, individuals directly pay to HMRC. Value added tax is paid by intermediary, hence, it is indirect tax. So, D is correct. TYU 6. Which of the following taxes is not paid by a company? Income tax is paid by individual. Corporation tax is paid by company. NICs are paid by individual and company. Value added taxes are paid by businesses. So business may be a sole trader or a company, right? So can I say income tax is the best example? Income tax is something which is not paid by individual. Okay, so that ends your chapter 1. I would recommend you to solve questions from exam kit and also from ACCA study hub, that is your quiz and practice questions. Okay, no need to go through the chapters of the ACCA Study Hub. This is enough. We have discussed enough of the. Now, on ACCA Study Hub, you may find that some things are not discussed because the pattern, or I would say the flow of syllabus, is different as compared to Kaplan and as compared to Study Hub. So, do not panic. Okay, that this thing is not taught or this thing is not covered in Kaplan. No, everything is covered. It's just that it would require time. Okay, something may be covered in some other chapter, which is covered in chapter 1 itself of ACCA study hub, right? So in quiz and in practice, you may find some questions which you are not aware of or you don't know how to solve this because that concept is covered later in Kaplan. Okay, so first focus on exam kit, finish that, and then do ACCA study hub in entirety. Okay, the quiz and practice only. Okay, so that was all about chapter 1. See you in chapter 2.